Okay, it looks like we're recording now. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to meet you virtually. I am Sherri Greenberg. I am the graduate advisor for the Masters in Public Affairs program here at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. And I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and then hand it over to Lawrence, who will do the same, and then we'll be available for your questions, and hopefully we don't have the answers. We will have the answers. If not, we will try to get them. So again, my name is Sherri Greenberg. I'm the graduate advisor for the Masters in Public Affairs program. I have actually been here at the LBJ School since 2001, which is really amazing. As I say, this is not my first career, but it is now my longest career. I do bleed orange. If you dig down, I went to undergraduate school here at UT, came from Oklahoma. Yes, now you know my secret, 17 years old, escaped. And I then went to London School of Economics for graduate school. After that, I was with Standard & Poor's in New York doing municipal bond ratings. And then back here in Austin, when we moved to Austin, capital finance manager of the city of Austin. And after that, I spent 10 years as an elected member of the Texas House of Representatives from 1991 to 2001. And when I retired from the legislature in 2001, I came here to the LBJ School of Public Affairs, where I have happily been ever since. I love people, I love teaching, research, and being graduate advisor is wonderful because it really does allow me to combine all my interests and allows me to work directly with students, which I love. So what's a graduate advisor, right? I think of the graduate advisors as we help you on your journey here at the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Many of you we have corresponded with, beginning when you were interested in the school or after you were admitted and trying to make decisions. We are still corresponding with you, but now we will be working directly with you on this journey at the LBJ School. And so by working directly, we will be here to answer your questions, either virtually, there's the Canvas site, or by text or email or Skype, whatever works. And then, of course, you'll be here for orientation in August, where you will see a lot of us as well as other folks. And we will have individual advising meetings with you in orientation before you register for your classes, which will happen at the end of orientation. And then we're available day in and day out. Students have my email, you have my cell number, text me, but tell me who you are because I won't know your number. And we're available to really help you, as I said, on your journey. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? How to pick your courses, how to plan your time here, how to be involved in the LBJ community and UT, and even beyond that. So I'm going to turn it over to Lawrence now, and he will tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're available to answer your questions.
All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Lecturer Lorinc Redei. I am the graduate advisor for the Global Policy Studies program. I also have had a couple of different careers before coming here. So I studied political science and international relations, then did a master's in European studies, and ended up working for the European Parliament, which is one of it's the legislative and elected branch of the European Union. So I worked there for a couple of years, then got drawn back into academia. I did a PhD in international relations, and then ended up here in Texas. So originally I'm from Budapest, Hungary, so I've born in the East, went to school in the North, and then worked in Western Europe, and now I'm a Southerner. So I guess I've hit all the four cardinal directions. And in terms of my role here, it's very similar to what Sherri described, so I'm not going to go over it. Essentially, I'm your Sherpa if you're in the Global Policy Studies program. So whether it has to do with internships or careers or course scheduling, or you just having to bounce some ideas off of somebody, I'm here to help you with that. And that's basically what we want to do today, is basically have you guys ask any questions that you might have about the curriculum, about anything that's kind of on your mind. We thought it would be kind of a waste of your time to just sort of go through our student handbook page by page. So just shoot us any questions that you might have. We have Amy here who's going to read off your questions, and then we'll just answer them sort of one by one. And we really do believe that at this stage, is not always the case, but at this stage there are no stupid questions. Right? It's not always true. So please be brave. Ask us whatever's on your mind. What are the things that you're sort of trying to figure out at this stage? Generally speaking, if you're doing this webinar, that means you're well prepared and that you're on the right track. So my hunch is these might be relatively specific ones, but please just give us any details that you might want. And it might be good for you to tell us if you're a GPS student or an MPAF student, because the answers to your questions might be slightly different depending on that. So if you could do that, that would be great.
We have our first question in from Molly. Molly wants to know, is it possible for MPAF students to do MGPS PRPs if they match your interests? And then the second part of that is, do people ever switch from MPAF to MGPS or vice versa?
So the answers to those questions are yes and yes. The PRPs, we find that really the majority of our PRPs have broad interest among MPAF and MGPS. There may be a couple that are just so specific that they would just suit the interest of MPAF or MGPS, but we find the majority do have very broad appeal as far as interest. And so we have PRPs that may see more for MPAF that MGPS are interested, or vice versa, and we really try to accommodate your interests, and you will hear more about all of those PRPs. We are taking descriptions of them. I've already done mine, and then more during orientation too. As far as going back and making a change in programs, yes, that does happen. We realize that there's nothing like being here, and occasionally there is a student who says, now that I'm here, I see that MGPS more suits my needs, or more, now that I'm here, I see that MPAF more suits my needs, and that would be something that you come and discuss with myself and with Lawrence. And if everybody thinks it's appropriate, then we would help you navigate making that change.
Two quick comments on that, Molly. First is, yes, you can. It makes sense to try to figure that out before classes really start, because the core course sequences are somewhat different for the two programs. So if you can make that choice sort of during orientation or even perhaps before, that can be useful to you in terms of getting your schedule aligned earlier rather than later. But even we've had people switch even after one semester. It's just then it gets a tiny little bit more complicated. But feel free to reach out to either me or to Sherri or both of us actually, if you have sort of concerns. And the one thing that I will say about switching from GPS to MPAC or vice versa, what you really want to look at are the core courses. In terms of all the courses that you choose, that you are either electives or specialization courses, a GPS student and an MPAF student could have the same exact basket of those courses that they took. The only things that are bound to be different are the core courses. So what you really want to look at is the core course sequence. Which core course sequence seems like it is giving you those skills that you really need for where you want to get to by the time that you graduate. And in terms of the PRPs, there's absolutely no problem with an MPAF student taking a GPS PRP or vice versa, except if certain ones are full. So if you can actually just write back and tell me which one you're interested in, I have a pretty good idea in my head of which ones are already full, so I can sort of let you know what your chances are of getting into that.
And likewise, I know there are some of the MPAF PRPs, for instance, already have half a dozen students in them, and so I have a good feel for that.
Okay. Next question. Okay. So the next question is from Nimra. Question is, what possibilities do MPAF students have to learn a foreign language in the case that I'm interested in having an international focus in the MPAF degree?
So certainly there are numerous students in the MPAF degree who have an international focus. As far as learning a foreign language, that would be on your own. And what do I mean by that? Taking classes in a foreign language do not count towards your program of work in the MPAF degree. So they are not part of your courses that count towards your master's. But there are students who decide, on their own over the summer or otherwise to learn a foreign language, a new one, or to become more adept at a foreign language. There are MPAF students. In fact, I just met with one yesterday and was signing off on some papers for him who go abroad during the summer, and that might be an opportunity where they're doing an internship abroad where they hone those language skills also.
Yes, just to sort of add, in case there's anybody in the GPS program who's wondering the same question, you can always take foreign language courses here at UT.
Right.
But the way that the University of Texas works is you need to pay tuition according to how many credits you're taking. So you're essentially you would be paying extra for that.
Right.
Currently, no undergraduate level courses count towards your program of work, and most foreign language courses are undergraduate level courses. For the GPS program, this might be about to change. We literally just had a meeting about this an hour and a half ago, where we're talking about potentially allowing a few undergraduate foreign language courses to count towards your GPS degree. But that's something that I will be able to tell you more about during orientation, because it's literally right now going through a process of being
hot off the presses.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly.
But that is the issue. Undergraduate courses cannot count towards your graduate program. So being in a master's program, undergraduate courses cannot count. If you were at the level where you were taking a graduate course in a foreign language, that would be a different issue. But it is, as Lawrence was saying, these are undergraduate courses. And that is not just for foreign language courses. You may see an elective out there that looks scintillating, but if it is an undergraduate elective, then that cannot count towards your graduate degree.
Okay. The next question is from an MGPS student. If there is a PRP this year that we're interested in and we aren't sure if it will be offered in the following year, should we think about pursuing it in the fall?
There is a slight chance you can do it. It depends on a couple of things. First is whether the PRP requires certain skills that you might not have yet because you haven't actually been here for a year. The second thing is whether there's room in the PRP. And the third thing is whether once all MPAF students have registered, there's room in the PRP. Right. So I cannot make a sort of firm commitment that you would be able to. But that being said, every year there are a few first-year students who take a PRP even in the MGPS program. It's certainly something that's doable, but we need to sort of discuss that in terms of your individual case and which one you're interested in and whether that fit would work. Knowing that we also have to accommodate all the first-year MPAC students who are coming in. So you're kind of at the back of the line, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Okay. The next question is from Nick. What is the approval process for taking a class not on the MGPS pre-approved specialization list or creating your own specialization?
It's very, very difficult. You need to convince me. That's basically the entire process. So you need to come make an appointment with me, and if you found a course and you think that it, for whatever reason, is something that's very useful to you and your career trajectory and what you want to do, you sort of make a case to me. If I buy it, you're good to go. If I don't buy it, you go back to the drawing board. In terms of creating a custom specialization, it's very similar. What I usually ask is that you write up a one-pager that explains what your custom specialization is and why it doesn't fit with any of the ones that are already existing. That you come up with a good sort of 6 to 8 courses that you think would count towards that specialization and why. And then you bring it into me and we discuss it. And most of the time, I would say once out of every 100 of these, I say, no, that doesn't make sense. Most likely what I'm going to say is either this seems like it's a little bit too broad or this seems like it's a little bit too narrow. And so we need to sort of rejig it a little bit. But otherwise, this is a growing trend. More and more GPS students are creating their own custom specializations. So it's certainly not a high bureaucratic hurdle.
Our next question is from Jessica, MPAff. As our graduate advisor, can we get your feedback on our individual development plans?
Yes, absolutely. And I see that as one of my primary and extremely important role as your graduate advisor is to meet with and work with each of you individually who are in the MPAF program on, as I said, your goals, your aspirations, your plans as far as your electives, your sequence of courses, whether or not you decide to do a specialization. Specializations are optional in the MPAF program. There are also portfolio programs, and the portfolio programs are from the graduate school of the University of Texas. They are multidisciplinary. They are housed in a department, but they are multidisciplinary, and we have students who also decide to pursue the portfolio programs. And so I take this as really my primary role to work with each of you to see, what's best going to suit your goals, your electives, whether or not you want to do a specialization, a portfolio. You can take electives that are outside of the LBJ school. Again, the bar is me, right? Meeting with me and seeing if those electives seem to have relevance to the MPAF program and meet your objectives.
Okay. Our next question is again from Nimra, MPAF student. It's a two-parter. Could you please clarify the timeline for a PRP? I was under the impression that it was done in the second year, but it seems like it could be done in the first year as well. I believe Dr. Weaver in the last webinar mentioned that MPAF students usually do the PRP in the first year. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. MPAF students usually do the PRP in the first year. That has been the history at the LBJ school for many years. And so incoming students, most of you will do the PRP in the first year. Sometimes there are situations that vary, such as dual degree students who could be here for 3 years, typically law here for 4. Or some of the part-time students. But there are exceptions on a case-by-case basis where we look at that, and it could be the second year. We are also just finishing a curriculum review for the MPAF program, and so we are going to be piloting some new approaches to the PRP. Todd Olmsted will have one that combines 2 different courses, a core course with a PRP. And so that is a pilot. We intend to be seeing more of that the following year, and probably seeing a transition, not in your year, but the following year, where there is more of a transition to the second year. But currently, most of the students, and this will be the case in your incoming class, will take the PRP in the first year.
It looks like we are kind of at a lull. If y'all want to talk a little bit about some of the classes you're teaching, maybe the core classes, anything like that, anything you feel might be relevant?
Sure. Let me give that a shot. So for those of you who are coming into the GPS program, I think one thing to realize, because I've gotten a couple of email questions from people about this already, we tend to mush a lot of the required core courses into your first year. So in your very first semester, you're going to be taking 4 courses, and 3 of those are basically set. One is the nature of the international system, the other one is microeconomics, and the third one is analytical methods. So at most, you really are going to only have to make one real big decision in terms of your registration in your first semester, which is what's going to be your 4th course. For all of these core courses, you have different sections, and so of course you're going to have some decision-making power in terms of what time and with what professor you want to take a certain course, but the courses themselves are set. And similarly, in your second semester, so in the spring of 2020, you are going to be taking the follow-up to microeconomics, which is international economics, the follow-up to nature of the international system, which is policymaking in a global age. And most of you will also take the mandatory writing for global policy studies course, either in the fall or in the spring. So your first year, you really have a relatively high degree of structure in your program. And then it's really the second year where you have a lot of space for electives. Now, that said, if for whatever reason you have very good reason to really want to take something in your first semester and have to put off a core course, we can always talk about that individually. But generally, that's kind of how it's going to look. So just to sort of give you guys a sense that, as you're really worrying about, oh, well, I need to make all these decisions about what to register for, it's actually not as many decisions as you think. So all of those questions, you'll probably have plenty of time during the orientation here in August to figure all of that out. And all of you are going to meet individually with me, if you're an MPAF student, then with Kate or Sherri for advising during the orientation week. Right. So all of you individually will get sort of this kind of advice for all of your registration needs. So no need to worry about that yet, because I'm starting to get the emails of everybody being like, oh, what am I going to register for? And
yeah, hold on. And it's very similar on the MPAF side. There are core course requirements, and most of those you're going to fulfill in your first year, and most of those are required in order to do your internship in the summer. And if we need to deviate, that would be on a case-by-case basis. So there's not a lot of need to worry now. The PRP, You will make your selection during orientation. We have what I call the dance card. You'll put down for MPAF, your first, second, third choice. The vast majority of students are in their first or second choice in those PRPs. And as I said, we have recordings of those that you will be seeing soon with each of us. I am teaching a PRP next year discussing our PRPs. But there are also 2 particular methods courses that are sequential. So what I mean by that is for your economics courses, unless you waive out of microeconomics, which typically there are about half a dozen students who do because they were economics majors in undergraduate, and you would see Sheila Olmstead about that. But typically, the typical sequence is you must take microeconomics before you take your applied policy economics, and you would take your IEM, your first methods course, before your advanced methods course. Now, for your incoming class, there have been, and typically are, a lot of questions about math and writing, and I've been fielding some of those. With the math, there will be a tutorial that you can do on your own over the summer, and then there will be an exam that you take when you get here. For your incoming class, for those students who, according to the exam, are not prepared to go straight into IEM, there will be a course that you will take, I'll call it a pre-IEM, and it will count towards your program of work. You will take that in your first semester, and then in your second semester, go ahead and take IEM and micro the same in your second semester. So for those students who are not quite ready for the micro and the IEM, you will take this pre-IEM and pre-micro course in the fall, and then you would take your micro and your IEM in the spring. So, but there's no reason to have any anxiety. As I said, there are prep materials available for you over the summer. And with writing, there will also be materials available. There will be a writing diagnostic that you don't need to worry about at this point, but that gives everybody an idea, us and you, about your writing skills vis-a-vis what we're expecting here. We don't at this time have a required writing course for the MPAF program. There are typically a few slots that have been available in the GPS writing classes, but we are also, as part of our new curriculum review that we have just completed for MPAF, will be piloting as an elective a new communications course in the spring that will be writing, oral communication, and negotiation skills. So stay tuned for that. And I will tell you that has been a passion of mine for several years. I'm very happy that as part of our curriculum review, we will be piloting that in the spring.
Okay, looks like we've got some more questions in. This is from an MGPS student, but could also be applicable to MPAF students as well. For dual degree students, do you recommend taking all courses at one school during the first semester, or a mix of 2 degrees?
Let me take the sort of GPS answer first, and then Sherri can weigh in on MPAF.
Right.
For GPS, what I usually say is that if you're coming in as a dual degree student, it makes sense to take your GPS core courses and get those out of the way. But in terms of your your fourth class, that could be something that you take towards your other degree. That's not a problem at all. In general, there aren't really any strict rules about, you need to spend 1 year here and then disappear for a year and go to the other side of campus to do the other part of your dual degree. You can always mix them. But my suggestion is always get those core courses out of the way because, again, as Sherri mentioned, some of these are sequential, so you need to take one before you can take the other. And so you don't want to get hung up on the order of things and therefore have to complete a core course in your last year, which is just kind of an odd thing to do. You also get a better sense of your cohort if you go through all the core courses together. This basically, your trial by fire, and so the people with whom you survive this, are going to become your friends and your professional network for your entire future career. So I think it makes sense to sort of jump straight in. We also have people who, for the same reasons, start much more intensively in their other program, and they only take one course at the LBJ school in their first semester, and then they come here. That's fine too, but most people tend to start with the GPS program just because of the sequential nature of the course.
And for MPAF, there is some variation. There are 17 dual degrees, but the typical course would either be to have your first year here at the LBJ school or to have your first year in the other program. And that way you are having a cohort and covering your requirements for the bulk of them, either at LBJ or Community Regional Planning or the McCombs Business School or social work, or, you know, there are quite a few of them. Some of them are more structured in that, for instance, at McCombs with the MBA, where you don't have as much latitude. You know, you do either your first year here or your first year at McCombs, and then you progress where you're doing your second year either here at McCombs, and then in your third year it's 50-50. So there is some variation according to the dual degree, but for the most part, it is the same with MPAF as Lawrence described, and that is the best course is to either start and get your requirements fulfilled either here or at your other program, and then move on accordingly.
Okay, our next question. For MPAF students, can you give some examples of some electives that may give the MPAF degree a more international perspective?
Certainly. There are quite a few electives that you can take here at the LBJ school, and we have many electives that are open to MPAF and MGPS. So you will see that the electives are not designated MPAF or MGPS. So pretty much all the seminars, all the electives are open to everyone. And I'll give you an example just because it's one I've taught. The title is What is a Smart City? And so in that class, we certainly start off with our definitions of what is a smart city, but we're looking at cities globally. Okay, so that would be an example. And in that course, I have students who are MPAF or MGPS. Also, I've had students from Community Regional Planning, engineering, all over campus. But that's just an example of an elective that there's a lot of interest from students in both. But really for many of the electives, there's appeal because it may be an elective that's, for instance, on development, right? And so that development elective may appeal to both students who are in GPS from a development perspective, but also to students who are in MPAF. So that would be another example that I can think of.
Okay. Next question is from an MGPS student. Can you broadly tell us the core differences between the two programs?
Between MPAF and MGPS? Mm-hmm. Sure. So I think there's two things I would think about. The first is to look at the core course sequence, right? So in the GPS program, you take this course on the nature of the international system, which is basically international relations, but all of it applied. A course on policymaking in a global age, which is basically political science, but also applied, like how do you make decisions, how do you develop policies and implement them. You take microeconomics and international economics and analytical methods, right? So how does this differ from the MPAF curriculum?
Well, I can cover the MPAF curriculum.
Yeah, and I think the main difference is that in the GPS curriculum, the analytical methods course, so your main methods course, covers both qualitative and quantitative methods. In the MPAF curriculum, it's basically all quantitative. And there's also only a 1 semester long analytical methods course in GPS, whereas in the MPAF core you have Introduction to Empirical Methods and Advanced Empirical Methods, both of which are quantitative.
No.
So actually that's not true. The second one can be either. So there's a little bit of an emphasis on those methods. In terms of more, I would say the kind of flavor of the two programs, which I think is what's usually what makes the decision for most students, is that if you are in the Masters of Public Affairs program and you're interested in foreign policy and international relations, most students who do that are interested in U.S. foreign policy. So how does the U.S. deal with immigration? How does the U.S. deal with terrorism? How does the U.S. deal with international development? Right? If you're in the global policy studies degree, the focus is a little bit more on the global policy problem as such, And the US would be potentially one of the actors that can do something about it, but maybe it actually isn't the most important one. Maybe what is actually really crucial in terms of international development is an international organization like the World Bank or the IMF. Or maybe it's a global NGO like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I think the focus is a little bit more looking at global problems, but not necessarily privileging or really focusing on the US as a particularly important actor, whereas in the MPAF curriculum, you're more likely to do that. So those I think would be the two main differences.
So in the MPAF program, the core course requirements are different than in the MGPS. And the core course requirements, you will take public financial management, which is not the same as statistics or analytical methods. It's really public finance. It's budgeting. It's very different. It's capital finance. It's bonds. It's debts. It's budgeting. It's evaluation. So you will take, and it's management of those. So public financial management is part of your core. You do take 2 semesters then of methods. The first one, the IEM. The second one, I have insisted that now there always be a qualitative choice for the second course. And so you will have a choice as to whether you want your second one to be a quantitative or whether you want a qualitative method. So what would be the difference? The qualitative methods could be ethnographic, focus groups, and that type of flavor to your second methods class. You will take 2 semesters of economics with the micro and then the advanced policy economics. And a lot of students are in those advanced policy economics mixed, both MPAF and MGPS together more and more. You will also take a policy development class focusing on the development process. How do policies come about? How do they be implemented? Who are the actors, the players? What is the legislative process, advocacy, and all that? And a public management class. So what does management mean in the public sphere, right? Which is, and in the nonprofit. We have a very large component here also of students who are interested in nonprofits. And so we do also have quite a few courses outside of the public management that are kind of second courses that you can take that would focus on nonprofit management. And so I do want to mention that because I know we have quite a few students who are interested in nonprofits. So then there is also, of course, the PRP that we have talked about, that policy research project requirement, and then the internship, which is a requirement. And this, I'll go ahead and mention it because there tend to be a lot of questions regarding what is the internship. The internship is a requirement of 400 hours with one entity. So you don't get to split it between 2 or 3 different entities. It's 400 hours with one entity. The vast majority of students do the internship after their first year because it's easy to do if you do the math, right? 40 hours a week times 10 weeks, you do the full 400-hour internship during the summer. However, it is not a requirement that it be during the summer. And there are some students, for a variety of reasons, who may choose to do it partially in the summer and in the fall, or the fall and the spring, or the spring and the summer. Also, every other year, I do an internship that is Texas Legislative Process and Internship. It is a class and an internship. I have 27 students who are right now finishing interning in the Texas Legislature. It's every other year because that's when the Texas Legislature is in the regular session. Most of the students are MPAF students. However, this time I do have a couple of students who are MGPS students who are having, I think, wonderful experiences interning at the Texas Legislature and in areas that may be more immigration or international in focus. And so those students are doing an internship that easily is 400 hours during the semester. Those students also do not take a full 4-course complement. It's just not possible. And if you're interested in that, you don't need to worry now because we're finishing a session year. We will not have a session next year. It will be the following year. So we'll have plenty of time to discuss that if you're interested.
We've got another question from an MGPS student. Is there a thesis requirement or anything that resembles a thesis at the end of the program?
Very good question. So for anybody who's a regular GPS or MPAF student for that matter, You are not required to write a thesis. We have a different name for a thesis. It's called a professional report. And that sounds, so we abbreviate as PR, which sounds very close to a PRP. So this will confuse you, but it's not the same. But essentially, we do not have a thesis requirement. Dual degree students do. So if you're doing a dual degree, you will be required to write a thesis of some sort. But if you are not a dual degree student, then this is not a requirement. You can always choose to do one. And if you do, we can get into the details of how that works. It basically works like a master's thesis anywhere else, so there's anything particularly complicated about it, but we will not require you to do it. So our capstone experience is this policy research project, which is a group research project, very much applied, and therefore we don't have a thesis requirement.
And on the MPAF side, there was a time when the professional report was required. That has not been so for a decade. On the MPAF side, if you do a dual degree, then there is a requirement to write a PR or a thesis, depending on which department your dual degree is with and what it is named, but it's the same animal, basically, either way, whether it's called a thesis or a professional report. Currently, there's also a requirement in the MPAF program that if you choose to do a specialization, that you write a professional report. Beyond that, there are students, and have been working with several this year, and I'll work with several next year, who just choose to write a professional report because they feel that that's important to them and to their experience, and they want to do that individual research. If you do that, there is a course that you sign up for that is the PR course. OSA will register you, and although it's a course, you do not attend a class. You pay for the PR course, but you work with your supervisors.
Okay. Our next question is, when will MGPS students take the Global Policy Crisis Simulation?
Going to be in the spring of 2020. So this is going to be the spring of your first year. I do not know the dates yet, but I will be. I already have an unanswered email in my inbox that I need to reply to that will determine it. Usually it's around February, at the latest early March. The crisis simulation is basically a 1 weekend long model UN on crack with a little bit of preparatory work before it. It's a 1-credit course, and that's the reason that the MGPS program requires 49 credits, whereas the MPAF one requires 48 credits, is we have that one extra global crisis simulation. It's also a great way for you to meet second-year students because we only run this simulation every other year. So every GPS student is going to do it who's on campus. So you're going to be put into teams that are going to be half second years, half first years, and most people tell me that that's basically where they first for the real. That's their first time that they're really spending a lot of time with second year students. So it also has a good social function to it. So I also don't know what the topic is going to be yet. It's going to be some frozen conflict somewhere because that's usually what these simulations are meant to do, but I don't know which one yet.
Okay. What is the typical timeline for applying and starting summer internships?
So the typical timeline for starting.
You don't have one yet? Then
yes,
for
exactly.
next summer,
then
just forget it. No, just kidding.
So Lawrence and I will talk about this in orientation, and we will talk about it. We will keep talking about it. We will send out emails, and we will have special sessions, and we will have individual advising, and we will have group advising. Basically, when you get here in orientation, you can start thinking about it. And something to keep in mind is that internships come in several flavors and varieties. Some of these internships you will know about because you will see them on what's called Handshake. It's a site that we will have for careers here at the LBJ school, and you can look on Handshake and they will be posted. Or there will be career fairs, right? Or there will be panels, like one that I'm going to be working on that's public finance with people who have careers and who are hiring in public finance, or individual employers who are coming and seeking interns. Okay. The other way, and this is something to keep in mind, is that you don't have to see a posted internship to be looking for an internship. Think about what you want to do and be proactive. There may be some entity that's never had an intern, whether it's in the public, private, or nonprofit, or NGO sector, and you can approach them and say, I'm interested in interning. And you'd be surprised how many times an internship results from that, because they may not have thought of the need, And so that's something else to keep in mind, I would say. But we will be talking about this more and more, starting in orientation, and in the fall we will have some official sessions to discuss internships.
Yeah. One thing I will add, so I said jokingly, if you haven't started yet, it's a problem. I was kidding, except for one example, which is that for those of you who are interested in intelligence,
Yes.
All the 3-letter agencies, CIA, NSA, etc., they, I believe, have deadlines early this summer for next summer internships because of the length of the security clearance process. The State Department's deadline is usually something like September 1st or September 15th. So basically, as soon as you get here, we're going to actually have, it's already scheduled, we're actually having a session with our diplomat in residence who can sort of tell you about State Department internships. So some of those really heavily bureaucratic ones that have security clearances attached to them, those do sometimes come up as soon as this summer. So if you're interested in something like the CIA, look it up now.
That's true.
And apply already, because those can really be crazy early. For everything else, it's basically as early as you can is best. And some places that you approach might need some more time, because again, as Sherri noted, we're going to encourage you to get in touch with organizations you want to work for. And if they've never had an intern before, they might think of, oh, well, maybe we should put together an internship program. And so you actually need to build,
look like?
So they might need a few months to just be like, oh, well, we've never thought about this, but this sounds good. We might need to create a position from scratch. So the earlier you can start, the better. But what I will say is what you can do now is get in touch with those kinds of organizations that you're interested in working for, and don't ask them about internships yet. Just ask them for informational interviews. Start to set up that professional network. Talk to those people whose jobs you want 5 years from now, and figure out what are the skills that they have, or the ones that they don't have but that they wish they had to do their jobs well. And that will also inform really easily what kinds of courses you want to take here. Because if you know the where you want to end up, this person is like, oh man, if I had only learned GIS, I would have been so much more ahead in my career. You can be like, well, that's a course I need to take.
And the internships too. So I had a student come in and speak with me, and this student was trying to decide between 2 different internships. When the student told me about a career goal in public finance, I said, oh, clearly this is the internship that you could take. This will be of great added value for that particular career. It is true about the 3-letter agencies, and there have been MPAF students also who have been in FBI, CIA, those, and also some of the other federal agencies, whether it's Congressional Budget Office or others, have some earlier deadlines, and then some of the others are much later. Deloitte will be recruiting, always is here on campus at the LBJ school. There is a challenge that Deloitte does, and and they will probably ask again one of the judges in that, but it's a good way to get an idea and flavor for Deloitte, and to look at internships with Deloitte. So that is another specific one. I know several of the bond rating agencies will be coming here, so that is another way. But start thinking about what do you want to do. Now, having said that, I realize that students are all over the map. Some students know exactly what they want to do, and that's how things turn out, or may end up being very different. Other students are very open, and that's fine. Start thinking about those possibilities and looking at them. Alums are a very good source also, and mentors, and we will be able to connect you with alums and mentors in the areas you're interested in, and we are. It could be an interest that in an area that Lawrence has or that I have, and we'll just pick up the phone. Or we'll say, there's another faculty member here across campus. Let me send you over there, and that faculty member may have a network. So keep that in mind too.
Okay. Our next question is from Fred. If possible, could you please provide some examples of PRPs available this fall? Fred is an MPAF student, so.
Yes, so PRPs available this fall. We have quite a few lined up. And I'll just kind of give you some topic areas, okay? We have, I know, one coming that will be on immigration and basically how do cities deal with immigration. That's with the city of Dallas. We have another one that will be have a focus on homelessness. I have one that will be on I call it Smart Cities, serving the outskirts. How do we provide services to people who are not living in city limits, right? Either because they've always lived rural or exurban or suburban, or because of gentrification and voluntary displacement, they're now living in areas where we have not traditionally provided services. So that's an example of just 3 different MPAC ones off the top of my head. There are others too, and there are some that will be of appeal to both MPAF and GPS, but that gives you a flavor of several.
Okay. Is there a qualitative methods course that could be taken as an elective for an MPAF student who would be interested in that, since it's not a part of the core aspect of that program?
Yes. And let me also say, with the AEM, students, if they are different topics, can take more than one. And this certainly happens. There may be a student who decides, I want a second methods course that is more quantitative, and I want a second methods course that is qualitative. And so you can take a second AEM. But we also have quite a few electives now, more and more, that you can take that may be data analytics, or that may be qualitative methods, such as a course on survey methods, or a course that I did this past year that was on design thinking and more of those qualitative methods with interviewing and design process. There are also some courses from other departments that are cross-listed, or there may be some that are electives in other departments that you could come see me about. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's take a look. Next question for MPAF students. Aside from interning at the Texas Ledge, could you provide some organizations where students commonly intern?
Oh, yes, all over the place. So MPAF students have huge variety of interests, and it's a very flexible program, the MPAF, as you can see, with 17 dual degrees for students who want to do, a dual degree and take 3 years. But for just students who are coming and just doing the 2-year MPAF program, very broad interest. And so their internships are very broad too. So we have students who may be interning with a nonprofit in New York City on civil rights. Okay, we may have students who are interning in DC because they want to do that. You don't have to be doing the DC concentration. We have students who could be interning with a state agency in California. We have MPAS students who intern with Deloitte, with other consultancies, with bond rating agencies. We have MPAS students who intern in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors in cities, states, across the country, and as I said, with nonprofits across the country, with private sector. We have students who may intern with Apple in their governmental relations. And we do have MPAS students who do intern outside the United States. So it's extremely broad.
Okay. Our next question, for the MGPS program, what have traditionally been some of the internship opportunities around Austin?
Relatively few, I'll be honest. We have several people who stayed in Austin and worked for different kinds of nonprofit organizations. One is called Glimmer of Hope. They are Austin-based and doing mostly development work. Another one is Rainforest Partnership. They do more environmental activism. And a few people who have worked for sort of Austin-based organizations, but sometimes they actually ended up doing part of their internship in Latin America.
Right.
So sort of local NGOs
Right.
that work mostly on Latin American issues. That has tended to be mostly it, I'll be honest. Most MGPS students do their internships either in Washington, D.C. or abroad, or in New York City or some other places. Those who stay in Texas mostly tend to go to Houston. It's a big energy hub, global energy hub, so people who are interested in energy, environment,
That's right.
Those kinds of issues tend to end up there. We've had some people who have worked for the Port Authority in Houston, working on sort of homeland security issues. But Austin itself is not, in terms of the internship opportunities, is not terribly fertile ground for internships. That said, what I think is interesting is we've had many more MGPS students stay in Austin
Yes.
After graduation,
Right.
because their skills, of course, are very marketable. So we actually have two MGPS alumni who work in Texas Department of Transportation, working on sort of transportation policy.
And there's one who's with the City of Austin.
Yep.
Transportation. She was in 3 years ago when I taught What is a Smart City for the first time. She was in that class. We do many projects in there. Then she interned for the City of Austin Transportation Department. And then they posted a position, which she obtained, and she's has a fascinating position at Austin Transportation Department in doing new mobility.
Yeah. So that, strangely enough, there's more people, I think, who are GPS graduates who stay in Austin for work than are people who are doing their internships here. Just because, in order to get credit for your GPS internship, it needs to have some sort of international policy content, not just policy content. Whereas, of course, we don't have any requirements for where you get a job afterwards.
We want you to have a job.
We want you to have a job. And so some people...
Money is good.
So one particular example I remember is we had a student who was very interested in Middle East politics and did her entire GPS career here, focusing on the Middle East. But her other passion was women's health. Yes. And so she worked for a number of years here in Austin for an abortion rights advocacy organization. And then has now sort of moved on to a different organization, I think, outside of Texas, but also still within sort of the women's health advocacy movement. So, this shows that she could have been very happy in either program, right? But she got the skills that she needed to make a good career out of it.
And I think that there's a common theme. More and more we're seeing, as we talked about with the policy economics and some of the other methods classes and the PRPs and electives, that we see a lot of crossover among MPAF and MGPS and their interests. And sometimes you will see a student who did MPAF that ends up in Brussels or in the State Department.
Okay, we've got a few other questions about internships. I'm just going to kind of three-part them together. Are internships typically paid or unpaid? Are internships taken for credit? And are most internships funded, or are there LBJ scholarships available for internships?
So I'll provide some answers. Lawrence will too, and we'll just kind of ad-lib. As far as whether they are paid or unpaid, there's a mix. Truly, I see some internships that are well paid. There's some, for instance, city or state agencies or departments or central health that I'm on the board of that require that their interns be paid, so they're paid. There are others in the private sector that pay and pay well. There are others where there is pay that you would not survive on, or no pay. And so they really run the gamut, I would say, as far as pay or no pay. On the as far as taking them for credit or not, on the MPAF side, as far as your internship, you have a choice. You can take the internship to just fulfill your requirement, and I call it check off the box. If you do that, you do not get 3 hours credit as seminar, you do not take it as a course, and you do not pay for it. If you want to have the academic credit for it, then you will sign up for academic credit. You will be, OSA will register you for the internship class. You will pay for that as a 3-hour class, and you will receive 3 hours credit for a seminar course. So there is a choice there. And the third part of that was, if you are in a position that is not paying you enough to survive, or you are receiving no compensation, there are some internship fellowship funds available here at the LBJ school. There is no guarantee. When you apply for your approval for your internship, either from myself or for Lawrence, which is now done online, if you are asking for that fellowship assistance, then you will have a budget that you submit with it. It will go to a committee here at the LBJ school, and there will be a determination made as to whether or not you will qualify for internship fellowship funding and how much that would be. But there's a whole process there. And if you have more questions about that, there is a fellowship office here at the LBJ school, and you can contact that fellowship office.
So just a few things to add. So in terms of credit or no credit, in terms of academic credit for it, so in the GPS program, we do not give you academic credit for completing the internship. You can do what we call a conference course, which in every other place that I've taught at, which is called independent study.
But there's a difference here. Let me make, just so if you all look at the course schedule, here at the LBJ school, if it's independent study, it is the 1 credit. And if it's a conference course, it is the 3 credit. Yes, we've done that just to confuse you, but if you're looking at the course schedule and you see independent study, that's a 1 credit. The conference course is a 3 credit.
So you can take a conference course during the summer while you're doing your internship and essentially do some academic work with a faculty member. You can do this virtually, right? You can just be sending papers back and forth, having a Skype meeting once or twice a month. So that's something that you can do. Then it's the same thing as Sherri explained. You'd have to pay for it, and then you get credit for it. But you don't get credit for the actual academic internship. In terms of paid and unpaid, I think what I've seen in the past couple of years is that there's fewer and fewer paid internships. More and more internships now are unpaid, unfortunately. The ones that tend to pay are private sector ones, which use it as a recruiting tool. And then ones that are working on, for instance, labor issues where the where the hypocrisy would be too great if they were working on, free, sort of fair labor practices and then exploiting you and then not paying you. Right. But those are really the only places I've seen. State Department doesn't pay. A lot of federal agencies don't pay. A lot of small NGOs don't have the money to pay you. So this is the reason that we have these internship fellowship funds, and those are generally speaking, those fellowship funds won't necessarily pay your entire summer, but they will take a big chunk out of your sort of proposed budget so that you can actually survive during the summer. And they are essentially means tested. So if you are going to stay in Austin, stay in your apartment, not have a commute, etc., you're going to get way less money than if you are flying to Geneva, have to live there in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and then buy your $12 coffees at the local coffee shop. So essentially we ask you to come up with a budget, and then we try to sort of make it as equitable as possible.
Because if you're MPAff and you're interning in San Francisco or New York, there's obviously a higher cost than if you are interning with a nonprofit in Nebraska, which I know a student who's doing that.
Okay, this is our last question for today. MPAff student here. I would really like to study abroad sometime throughout my graduate career. I plan on working in the emergency services, specifically in international disaster response and preparation. Yes. Which countries and schools abroad does LBJ have the best networks and relationships with?
So I can't help saying Houston. No, if you're interested in, we're still dealing with that, and so is the Texas legislature. But putting aside Houston, we have MPAS students every year who go very popular programs in Berlin and in Mexico. And those are two that we have a great success with and quite a bit of experience with. And so those are two that are very popular, the program in Berlin and the program in Mexico. And I know every year I have MPAS students who are studying abroad, either in the program in Berlin or in Mexico. We have had students who go other places, who've gone to Israel or some other places, but those have been the two most popular. Yeah. There also could be the opportunity to do an internship abroad.
Yeah. So two things. One, you can always set up your own study abroad program as well through UT.
That's right.
But the one thing that I will mention, we have not had very many people take advantage of this, but we do have a standing cooperation with the International Development and Economic Cooperation IDEC University in Hiroshima.
That's right.
In Japan.
We did.
And I don't know the details of what kinds of stuff they offer, but I know that in Japan, emergency preparedness and emergency response is a really big deal. They are on the forefront of that. So I can imagine that IDEC might have some cool courses on that. If you're more interested in that, you can always email us and we'll round up some people who know a little bit more about this, but
Right.
we have this kind of cooperative arrangement with them. It's been underutilized, and so it's something that I think we could look into for you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because certainly when it comes to disaster, and the reason why I mentioned Israel is we have had a cooperative arrangement with a university in Israel, and some students have gone there, and that came to mind too with disaster preparedness.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for your attention. And if we didn't cover any of your questions, then please feel free to email us, and we'll get back to you.
Yes, please do. You know how to reach us.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.